We're back again reading Boxcar Children, Surprise Island. It's book number 2 in this series by Gertrude Chandler Warner, and we're on Grandfather's Visit. If you remember, in the last chapter, Violet just got a violin and she started to take violin lessons from Mr. Joe. All right, so Grandfather's Visit. Okay, you ready to begin? I'm going to give me a drink of water. And then I will begin. We must be ready at 10 o'clock, said Jessie the next morning. Grandfather told Captain Daniel to meet him with a boat at 10 o'clock, and he is always on time. We must certainly show him the museum, said Henry. I know he will be interested in the Native American things, but I'm not so sure about the birds and flowers. I think he will love our museum, said Violet. It has his name on the door. She looked up and read the sign again, the James H. Alden Museum. Everything is ready, said Jessie. She took one last look. Let's go down on the dock and wait for him. Mr. Alden was more than delighted to see his grandchildren, all waving from the dock. Fine children, very fine children, he said to Captain Daniel. Best that I ever saw, said Captain Daniel, waving too. He tied the boat and watched the old man and his happy grandchildren as they went out of sight and into the barn. I want to see everything you have, said Mr. Alden. He sat down in the company chair and looked around. Say, what's that I see? A museum? Grandfather was on his feet in a minute. Are you going to let me see it? He said excitedly with his foot on the stairs. Of course, cried Jessie. If you don't mind the heat, it's kind of hot up there. No, I don't mind at all, said Mr. Alden. Here is Mr. Alden going into Mr. Alden's own museum. Oh, look at that picture. It's so rich. What a wonderful illustration. You can read those words, but it says the James H. Alden Museum. And over here it says Indian exhibit, or Native American is what we say today. You see, Mr. Alden is making his way quickly up the stairs, isn't he? He saw what the museum was like with one look. Which one of you thought of this? Tell me about it. They told him all about the museum. They showed him the flowers, the seaweed, the boxes of shells and butterflies, and the paper birds and real branches. Mr. Alden looked for a long time at the bluebird sitting near its nest. There were 4 blue eggs cut from paper in the nest. The birds left the nest, said Henry, so we took it. Good, said Mr. Alden, smiling. And what did you find, Benny? I found a big bone in the shell pile. We ought to tell you about that bone, Grandfather, said Henry. Let's go downstairs and you can sit in the company chair. You see, we found the skeleton of a whole Native American, and Benny found his leg bone. Joe says it's very important and not to tell anyone but you. Where is this skeleton? It's near a very big pile of shells on the end of the island. Yes, I remember seeing that pile of shells when I was a boy. Joe told us not to pick up any of the Native American bones, said Benny. He said you could get men to do it right after we got home. Joe, he sure seems to know a lot, said Mr. Alden. I'll see him before I go. Look in the box, Grandfather, said Benny. There's an arrowhead, and there's an axe head, and there's a cooking bowl, all Native American Indian stuff. And that's a tool made out of a bone. Watch found the axe head and the tool. Well done, cried Mr. Alden. Who told you? Did anyone tell you to make a museum to put these things in? No. Don't you like it? Yes, Henry. I like it very, very much indeed. It just seems very strange because it's the very thing I used to do myself when I was your age. I used to go out in the woods all alone and sit for hours listening to the birds. Yes, said Henry, smiling. We do the very same thing. We must be just like you. Do you remember that game we played, Just Like Me? That's fun, isn't it? Then Violet brought her violin for him to see. To their surprise, Mr. Alden took it from her, put it under his chin, and began to play. He played very well. Ooh, that solves our mystery, doesn't it? We asked yesterday, does Mr. Alden play the violin? Answer, he does. You didn't know I played, did you? Said Mr. Alden to the surprised children. That's a fine little violin, Violet. You're wonderful, Grandfather, cried Henry. Always doing something new. We didn't know you could play. I'm a bit out of practice, said Mr. Alden, handing the Violet back to the violin. Haven't even held a violin for years. Now, what else have you got to show me? You must come to the little hut to see Joe, said Benny. I think Joe went over to the mainland this morning, said Violet. That's funny, because he certainly knew you were coming today. That makes me cross, shouted Benny. I want you to see Joe. He's my best friend in the whole wide world. Then I'm cross too, said Mr. Alden. What time do you have dinner around here? And by the way, just a quick reminder, what does cross mean? It means someone who, when you say something, it means you're a little bit upset about it. When is dinner? Almost right away. Are you hungry? I'm as hungry as a bear, answered Mr. Alden. At once, Jessie put some water in the big kettle. You children set the table and get the milk out, so the grandfather won't have to wait a minute after dinner is ready. Oh, you needn't hurry as much as that, said Mr. Alden. I can wait a half an hour, maybe. Before that time, the little vegetables were done. Jessie put them in a big dish and poured melted butter over them. There were plenty of bread and butter to go along with the vegetables. And because they had company, Jessie had put 2 eggs and some sugar into the milk. This is a delicious drink, said Mr. Alden. I shall come again. Please do, cried Violet. But you're not going to go home for a long time yet, I hope. I think I am, said Mr. Alden. I should like to take you all with me, just on a little trip, for about an hour or so. All right, said Jessie. I thought for a minute that you wanted to take us off the island for good. You like it, don't you? No, it won't take very long. But I do want to show you something. It did not take long for Captain Daniel to get the family to the mainland. They got into Mr. Alden's waiting car and were taken into a building they had never seen before. It's a museum, cried Henry. Look, Jessie, look! He pointed to the name over the door, which said in large letters cut in stone, The Alden Museum. My goodness, cried Jessie. Is that for you, Grandfather? I suppose it is, said Mr. Alden. It's been here for a very long time. You gave them money to build it, cried Henry. The surprised children followed their grandfather inside, where a young girl came and showed them everything he wanted them to see. At last they came to a small room, and the girl told them to go in. Jessie was the first to go in to see a sign which read, The first collection made by James Henry Alden when he was a boy of 15. What do you know? Cried Henry, looking at the birds. Our birds are just like yours. And Mr. Alden's birds were painted once too, and they were sitting in real trees. The birds left their nest, said Mr. Alden, with a twinkle in his eye. So I took them. Henry laughed and said, You didn't want to kill any birds either, did you? Mr. Alden went on, No, the real birds out in the museum were found dead and brought to us. Not a bird in this museum was killed for me. And now I'll let you go back to your island and wash your dishes. When they got into the boat, he gave them each a box, and it was not until later that he remembered that he had not seen Joe, the handy man. This is kind of a short chapter, wasn't it? So let's just recap kind of what happened here in this particular chapter. We had Mr. Alden's visit. He came to see them. He came to visit them. And what did he see? He saw the museum. What else did he see? He saw the other things, and he heard about Joe, and he heard about all these wonderful things. He didn't get to meet Joe, but then Mr. Alden had a special surprise for them. He took them to his museum and to his very special exhibit. That was his very first museum when he was a boy of 15. Interesting, isn't it, that the grandchildren are very much like their grandfather. I hope you've enjoyed this chapter, but you thought I was going to go off without it. Chapter 11 is called Apple Pie. Apple Pie. I hope you guys have enjoyed this chapter, and I hope you have a great day.